There's lots of different types of programs as well. I mean, there's pose running, which is which is a particular type of running invented by a man called Nicholas Romanoff, and that's sort of landing in mid-stance, mid-foot, running and keeping and short stride length, and but that doesn't suit everybody. It's interesting. There's a conflict and controversy about should you land on your heel, should you land on the midfoot. Actually, if you look at the heel, it's very interesting because the calcaneum has thin cortical bone, which is highly vascularized, and a great deal of fat tissue in sort of pockets. And actually, on testing, it has twice the viscoelastic properties and shock absorbing of sorbothane. Right. So actually, the heel is actually quite a good shock absorber, in fact, and it distorts to about 30% when you're running. If you've got running shoes on, then that combined with the shoe gives you about 40% absorption of shock. If you're barefoot running, then you're getting about 60% distortion. So if you're a barefoot runner running a heel, you can end up damaging the heel ultimately, and the fat.
Okay, so since we're on that subject, we'll get back to the knee eventually. But
sorry.
I mean, in terms of barefoot running, I think I can probably say that the consensus in the past on the show of people talking about that is that barefoot running suits some people, it doesn't suit others, and it's not something you should go into straight away. You should break yourself in gradually. Are you a fan of barefoot running?
Well, I think it's horses for courses, like you say. I mean, if you're going to do that kind of running, you've got to have a particular type of biomechanics and foot type, and you're not going to do that as a novice, because most novice runners do land on their heel. There's a whole. You need to be sort of re-educated to how to run barefoot. Right. So going back to the knee.
Yeah, let's go back to the knee. Unless you want to stop at the calf, because Corbs has asked us a question about that.
Oh, okay. Well, I forgot to say that the Achilles actually was quite an interesting shock absorber. Where it inserts into the calcaneum, it does a sort of 90-degree turn. And it gives it kind of like a spring-like property. And the tendo Achilles absorbs about 30% of the ground reaction force, or as Grockovetsi says, the gravitational pulse. Yeah. So if you add all these different structures up, as I said earlier,
how much did you say was absorbed by the calcaneum?
It's about 30% as well. So if you add the calcaneum and all the other structures, the fascial system, you can see that we're actually very well adapted to load. The problem, and we will get back to the knee in a minute, the problem is that you've got to stay in the Goldilocks zone under the bell curve. If you don't do enough in your D condition, then you're going to get patellofemoral pain. You'll get other syndromes. If you're at the other end of the scale and you're doing ultra distance, then you're obviously much more injury prone. I've actually seen more athletes doing ultra distance, and I saw someone recently who does the arch to arc, which is Marble Arch to Dover run, channel swim and cycle to Paris. So these sort of events are they're causing real stress reactions actually. And there was an interesting study done in Holland where they took 20,000 people and they followed them in their life. I can't remember how many years. They studied it in 1976. And actually the people that ran between 10 and 20 miles a week lived 6 years longer on average than the ones that did 30 plus miles a week. It's illustrating there is a stress reaction if you go too much down the bell curve.
Yeah. Just quickly before we do move on, you talked about gradually building up stress levels on that. To what extent does the calcaneum adapt to those stresses? How much do those fat pockets change? Or
I don't know the exact answer to that. I just know that they are vulnerable to damage, and that if you're a barefoot runner and you're landing very heavily on the heel without having a shock absorbing shoe, if you run too many miles, i.e. more than 30 miles a week, then you can suffer damage to those fat tissue, which I don't think fully recovers. I think it becomes it develops sort of pathology effectively and loses a lot of its shock absorbing qualities.
I imagine you must have seen quite a few stress fractures in your time.
I have, and stress fractures. There's a vulnerable group if you've got young women who've dysmenorrhea and they are underweight. That you always have to bear that in mind, particularly with femoral neck and lower tibial stress syndrome. So we do see stress fractures as well.
Yeah, I was thinking of the calcaneus or calcaneum.
I haven't seen many of those actually. Yeah. More in the metatarsal and the second metatarsal and lower tib. fibular stress fractures occasionally, but a number of hip-related ones.